Somewhere on the island of Mallorca, inside the red-walled indoor courts of the Rafa Nadal Academy, a 20-year-old from the Philippines is grinding through a 14-ball rally against a practice partner, and with every shot that kicks off that slow, heavy surface, she is doing something most people still cannot quite believe. She is rewriting the entire tennis history of her country, one clay-stained sneaker at a time. A year ago, she was ranked outside the top 150. Today, as she prepares for the most important surface transition of her young career, Eala sits at number 45 in the world, fresh off reaching round 16 at both Indian Wells and the Miami Open. And she is staring down a European clay swing that could push her into territory no Filipino tennis player has ever dreamed of reaching. But here is the thing about clay. The thing that makes this chapter of her story so gripping, it has always been her most complicated relationship. Let's rewind. Because the context is everything. Alexandra Maniego Eala picked up a tennis racket when she was 4 years old at the Valle Verde Country Club in Pasig City, on courts made of crushed shell rather than red European dirt. She grew up hitting flat, hitting early on the rise, punching forehands off surfaces designed to reward pace and timing. By the time she was 13, she had done something almost unthinkable for a kid from the Philippines. She moved to Mallorca, Spain, to train full-time at the Rafa Nadal Academy. 13. Away from her family. Away from everything she knew. Into a world of unfamiliar languages, unfamiliar food, and unfamiliar red clay that deadened her shots and demanded patience she had never been forced to learn. That was 2018. She was a child. She is not a child anymore. The trajectory since then has been astonishing but not linear. Eala tore through the junior ranks, winning the Les Petits as that prestigious under-14 tournament in France, becoming the first Filipino ever to do so. She captured 2 Grand Slam junior doubles titles, including the 2020 Australian Open. She turned professional with enormous expectations riding on her shoulders, the kind of expectation that comes from being the sole standard-bearer for an entire nation of over 100 million people who had never had a player at this level before. And for a while, the professional transition was bumpy. Rankings hovered. Results were inconsistent. She was learning, as every young player must, that the gap between dominating juniors and competing against grown women who have been touring for a decade is not a gap so much as a canyon. Then came 2025 and everything changed. The 2025 season was, in Eala's own words, the best year of her sporting life. It began modestly enough, but the real catalyst arrived in Miami, the same tournament that would become a recurring landmark in her career. She entered as a wild card, ranked well outside the seeds, and she proceeded to rip through the draw in a manner that left the tennis world blinking. She beat Clara Tauson. She beat Jasmine Paolini, a Grand Slam finalist. And then, in the quarterfinals, she faced Iga Swiatek, the 5-time major champion, the former world number 1, a player who had absolutely owned this surface the year before. Eala won 6-2, 7-5. The scoreline barely captured the performance. She dictated play from the baseline, found angles that Swiatek could not anticipate, and when the Polish star tried to turn the second set into a dogfight at 4-2 up, Eala refused to wilt. She reeled off 5 consecutive games. The victory propelled her into the semi-final of a WTA 1000 event, a stratosphere no Filipino had previously visited. That Miami run was the inflection point. It gave her belief that she could hang with the very best, and the rest of 2025 unfolded accordingly. She reached the final at Eastbourne. She captured her maiden WTA title at the Guadalajara 125 Open, coming from a set down against Punna Udvardy in the final, losing the first set 1-6 before roaring back to win 7-5, 6-3. That kind of comeback reveals character. It reveals something that cannot be coached. She won the SEA Games gold medal in Thailand, carrying the Philippine flag at the opening ceremony with the Rafa Nadal Academy cheering her on from across the world. She cracked the top 50 for the first time. She finished the year with a 40-26 record, a number that looks solid on paper and even more impressive when you consider the caliber of opponents she faced. And then came the final, crowning moment of 2025. In late November, Rafael Nadal returned to a tennis court for the first time since his retirement at the Davis Cup a year earlier. And the person he chose to hit with, the person he shared the court with in Manacor, was Eala. She described it as a dream come true. He gave her tips, shared observations about her movement, and for a young left-hander who had grown up inside the walls of his academy absorbing his philosophy by osmosis, the moment carried a significance that transcended tennis instruction. It was an acknowledgement, a passing of something intangible. Now fast forward to where we are today, late March 2026. Eala has just come off the hard-court swing in the United States, and the results were a mixture of exhilarating highs and sobering realities. At the Australian Open in January, she exited in the first round. She bounced back with a semi-final showing at the Auckland Open, climbed to a career high of number 29 after a quarter-final run in Dubai where she beat Jasmine Paolini again, and then rolled into Indian Wells riding a wave of confidence. There, she advanced to the round of 16, and along the way she went up against Coco Gauff, the world number 4. Eala took the first set 6-2 in commanding fashion before Gauff retired with a left arm injury. The win, however it came, was another signal. The Filipina belongs on these stages. Miami was next, and for 2 rounds she looked comfortable, beating Donna Vekic in 3 sets and then dismantling Petra Marcinko 6-love, 6-2. She overcame Magda Linette in the round of 32 and then ran into Karolína Muchová, the world number 14, in the round of 16. What followed was the kind of match that sticks in a young player's memory like a bruise. Muchová delivered a masterclass, 6-0, 6-2 in barely 60 minutes. Eala won only 36% of points on her first serve. She was broken 5 times. She could not find her rhythm, could not redirect Muchova's unpredictable variety, and the scoreline was as lopsided as any she has suffered in a marquee event. It was a reminder. A sharp, unmistakable one. At this level, the margins are razor-thin, and when your serve falters against a player with Muchova's creativity, you get buried fast. That loss, paradoxically, might be the best thing that could have happened heading into this clay court swing. Because it exposes the exact area where Eala needs the most growth, and it happens to be the area that clay courts ruthlessly test: sustained point construction, serve reliability under duress, and the mental patience to grind through elongated rallies without forcing the action prematurely. These are the lessons that red dirt drills into you, sometimes gently, sometimes brutally. And so here she is, back at the academy in Mallorca, on those indoor red clay courts where she first learned to slide, first learned to add rotation to her left-handed forehand, first understood that a surface can be a teacher if you let it. The footage that has emerged in recent days shows her engaging in intense baseline rallies, working the ball deep with heavy topspin, extending points deliberately rather than going for winners at the first opportunity. She is recalibrating. The hard-court season rewarded her flat, penetrating ground strokes, her ability to take the ball early and redirect pace. Clay demands something different. It demands that she construct patterns, use angles to drag opponents wide, and develop the stamina to win points on the 7th, 8th, 9th shot of a rally rather than the 2nd or 3rd. Her clay court record has historically been her weakest surface segment. In 2025, she went 2-4 across 4 clay tournaments from April through June, with her best result being a round of 16 at the Oeiras Open. She was eliminated in the opening rounds at Madrid, Rome, and Roland Garros. For someone training at the Rafa Nadal Academy, which sits on arguably the most famous clay court facility in the world, this might seem paradoxical. But the reality is that Eala's natural game was forged on faster surfaces. She grew up on hard courts in the Philippines. Her instincts favor flat, aggressive ball striking. Her left-handed forehand, which creates naturally awkward angles for opponents, thrives when the ball comes through fast and stays low. On clay, the ball bounces higher, hangs in the air longer, and gives opponents time to recover from positions that would be winners on a hard court. Everything she does instinctively gets neutralized by the surface, unless she adapts. The adaptation is what this training block is about. The Rafa Nadal Academy has 26 courts across multiple surfaces, including dedicated clay courts where Eala has spent thousands of hours since she was a teenager. The coaching team there understands the specific adjustments a player needs to make between hard court and clay. It is not simply about footwork, though the sliding technique is crucial. It is about changing the shape of the ball, adding more revolution, hitting with a higher net clearance, being willing to play ugly, scrappy points rather than clean, highlight real winners. It is about accepting that on clay, patience is not passivity. Patience is a weapon. Eala's upcoming schedule reflects a deliberate strategy. Her first clay event will be the WTA 500 Upper Austria Ladies Linz, running April 6th through 12th. This is a fascinating choice because the tournament has actually switched surfaces this year, moving from indoor hard court to indoor clay. It is a hybrid environment, indoor but on red dirt, which could ease the transition for someone whose hard court instincts are still fresh. The draw is strong, featuring Klara Tauson, Ludmila Samsonova, and Emma Raducanu among others, but at this level Eala has proven she can compete with anyone on a given day. After Linz, the schedule gets more ambitious. She has entered qualifying for the WTA 500 Stuttgart Open, a stacked event headlined by Aryna Sabalenka, Coco Gauff, and Elena Rybakina. The decision to play Stuttgart qualifying rather than a smaller tournament shows remarkable ambition. She wants to face the best. She wants to learn at the highest intensity rather than padding her record against lower-ranked opponents on smaller stages. Andy Roddick, who recently interviewed Eala on his Served podcast, was struck by exactly this quality. He called it a lesson in self-awareness, saying he could never have been that pragmatic at her age, especially in the eye of the popularity storm and the responsibility that comes with her position as the trailblazer from her country. Beyond Stuttgart, the Madrid Open looms, this year to be played at Real Madrid's Bernabeu Stadium in a stunning venue change. Then Rome. Then Roland Garros. This is the gauntlet. These are the events that separate the promising from the elite. And here is the critical detail from a rankings perspective. Eala has only 70 points to defend through the end of the French Open. That is virtually nothing. It means that almost any result she gets will add to her total. 5 or 6 wins across these clay events could push her back into the top 30. A deep run at any of the WTA 1000 tournaments or at Roland Garros itself could launch her toward the top 20. The math is wildly favorable. The only question is whether the tennis will cooperate. There are genuine tactical challenges she will need to solve. Her serve, which has been identified by analysts as her most exploitable weakness, becomes an even bigger liability on clay. The slower surface gives returners more time to load up on their response, and if Eala cannot hold serve consistently, she will constantly be playing from behind in matches. On hard courts, a mediocre serve can be compensated for with aggressive return games and quick points. On clay, rallies are longer, breaks are harder to get back, and the server needs to hold to survive. If there is one thing she is working on most intensely in Mallorca right now, it is probably this: adding pop and placement to that first delivery, finding ways to use her left-handed angle to pull opponents off the court before the rally even begins. Her shot variety, on the other hand, could be a genuine weapon on clay. She has excellent touch, a deceptive slice that stays low and skids through the dirt, and the ability to change pace mid-rally in ways that disrupt opponents' timing. Her drop shot, when executed correctly, is devastating on a slow surface because the ball dies after the bounce. And her left-handed forehand creates angles into the ad court that most right-handed opponents rarely see, pulling them into uncomfortable positions and opening up the court for the next ball. If she can learn to use these tools within the framework of patient, grinding rally play rather than as shortcuts to end points prematurely, her clay court game could be far more dangerous than her record suggests. There is also the intangible factor, and this is where the story transcends statistics. Eala carries the weight of a nation every time she steps on court. She has spoken about this openly, about the privilege and the pressure of representing the Philippines on the world's biggest stages. She has witnessed poverty in her surroundings back home. She does not take anything for granted. That perspective, that grounding in gratitude rather than entitlement, shapes how she responds to adversity. After the Muchová loss, she did not spiral. She went back to Mallorca and got to work. She ran into Nadal at the academy and chased after him, by her own admission, because even now, even as a top 50 player, she understands that mentorship and guidance are never something you outgrow. The coming weeks will test her in ways that the hard court season did not. Clay demands a different kind of toughness. It demands the willingness to lose the first set, to be down a break in the second, and to still believe you can win. It demands the physical conditioning to sustain 3-set battles in the European spring sun, where matches last 2.5 hours and every point feels like it was earned with a pickaxe. It demands the tactical flexibility to abandon what is not working mid-match and adapt on the fly, something Eala has shown flashes of but has not yet mastered consistently. But if there is one thing this young woman has proven across the past 18 months, it is that she rises to challenges that seem outsized for someone her age and her ranking. She beat Iga Swiatek as a wild card. She won a WTA title from a set down in the final. She reached a career high of number 29 after beating multiple Grand Slam champions. She trained with Rafael Nadal himself, absorbing advice from the greatest clay court player in the history of the sport, inside the walls of the academy that bears his name. The foundation is there. The raw materials are there. What remains is the refinement, the willingness to embrace the grind that clay demands, and the patience to let results come incrementally rather than in spectacular bursts. The red dirt of Europe is waiting. It does not care about rankings or narratives or where you came from. It cares only about whether you have done the work, whether your feet can slide into the right position, whether your arm can generate one more revolution of topspin, whether your mind can endure one more rally, one more set, one more match in the long and unforgiving season ahead. Alex Eala is doing the work. Right now, in Mallorca, on those indoor clay courts that have been her second home since she was a teenager, she is doing the work. And for a country of over 100 million people who have never had a player quite like her, the anticipation of what comes next is something close to breathless.